Welcome to Prevention Leaders Podcast with Dave Clausen, your source for insights into the world of substance misuse prevention. Each episode, Dave brings you the latest strategies, expert discussions, and real-life success stories designed to empower your work and inspire impactful change. Whether you're a prevention professional, community advocate, or simply passionate about making a difference, this podcast will keep you informed and motivated. Get ready to lead with a confidence that drives lasting results. Let's lead the change together.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Prevention Leaders Podcast. And today I'm changing up the plans. Instead of the previously scheduled episode for today, I wanted to pivot. See, last week I had the honor of speaking at SAMHSA's Prevention Day, and my session was titled Speak to the Heart, Unleashing the Power of Engaging Stories. I was blown away by the reception from the packed room, and really humbled by the amount of questions at the end of the session and how many youth felt empowered and confident and safe to stand up in front of a crowded room, get on the microphone and have a conversation with me. And that really spoke to me, and I felt the need to really repackage and share the same message here so you can hear it for those that weren't able to attend Prevention Day. And so without further ado, here is my session. I'm honored to share a bit about my journey and how storytelling has become a cornerstone of the work that I do. So today we're going to explore how storytelling can be a transformative tool in substance misuse prevention, particularly in preventing youth from initiating substance use. Now, both are rooted in connecting people, reducing stigma, and fostering healthier communities. Now, I spent a lot of my career in prevention, yet for years, I was caught in a cycle of pain and isolation. I struggled with PTSD, a traumatic brain injury, and addiction that consumed my sense of self. Life felt like a whirlwind, pulling me further from who I was and the person I wanted to be. Now, each day was a fight for normalcy, and the weight of my challenges felt insurmountable. I felt like a shadow of myself, lost in a fog. I didn't know how to escape. But then one evening, while sitting alone in my small one-bedroom apartment, I picked up Braving the Wilderness by Brené Brown. As I read, her words struck a chord deep within me, speaking to authenticity, courage, and the importance of belonging. Now, that moment sparked a realization. I had become disconnected, not just from others, but from my own story. Addiction had severed me from who I truly was, and reclaiming that connection felt like the first step towards healing. So I began journaling. I was a little hesitant at first, but I eventually poured my experiences onto the pages of that journal. I wrote about the joys and the dreams of my younger self, the heartbreaks that led me to addiction, and the resilience that had carried me forward even when I didn't realize it. Now, through this process, I discovered a profound truth. My story wasn't just a reminder of what I'd endured. It was a source of strength. By owning my narrative, I started to heal. Over time, I realized I wasn't alone. The stories of others shared in books, support groups, and even casual conversations became a source of solidarity and hope. Their courage to share inspired me to share my own, and through that, I found connection and empowerment. Today, I stand stronger, no longer defined by my scars, but empowered by them. My story, like so many others, is a testament to the transformative power of storytelling. Stories offer us a way to reclaim our identity, connect with others, and inspire change. We all work with other people facing challenges like these every day. And through stories, we have the ability to help them and to help ourselves heal and grow. Here's what we'll cover today. We'll explore how storytelling impacts addiction and mental health. We'll learn how storytelling can build trust and reduce stigma. And finally, I'll share practical strategies to integrate storytelling into your work, whether you're in prevention, treatment, or recovery support. By the end of this session, you'll have actionable ideas to enhance your practice and to inspire change. So let's start with why storytelling is so impactful. People way smarter than me that are neuroscientists have shown that stories activate multiple areas of the brain, engaging our emotions and creating lasting impressions. Now, sharing data is important, but it's stories of recovery, resilience, and hope that inspire people to act. So why do we love stories so much? It's not just because they entertain us. Stories engage more parts of the brain than facts alone. They activate the sensory and the motor cortex, making us feel as though we're part of the narrative. Now imagine if somebody shares a story of walking through a forest on a crisp fall day. The sun is shining down, illuminating the yellows and the reds and the greens of the leaves above. Now, our brains are going to imagine the sights and the sounds of a forest. Our brains are going to imagine the crisp fall air, the warm sunshine on our face. Now, this deep connection makes stories 22 times more memorable than raw data. That's an incredible tool for prevention. Let's look deeper into what happens in the brain when we hear a story. First, storytelling triggers the release of oxytocin. Oxytocin fosters trust and empathy, which are the foundations of the work that we do in prevention. A story with emotional depth encourages connection, not only with the storyteller, but also with the message that they're sharing. Next up, mirror neurons. They fire in our brain as if we are experiencing the story ourselves. And this creates a powerful sense of shared understanding, which is essential in breaking down stigma and building rapport with clients, communities, and stakeholders. Now, finally, stories, they regulate our brain's stress and reward systems. A well-told story can decrease cortisol, the stress hormone, and it can increase dopamine, which improves focus and creates a sense of reward. Think of how you have felt after hearing an inspiring recovery story, likely calm, yet energized, and motivated to take action. That's dopamine and oxytocin at work. Data, data, data. Data is essential in the work we do. But let's face it, numbers alone don't move people. Now, studies show that while we forget 90% of statistics, we hold on to impactful stories. Why? Because stories contextualize data. They make it personal and relatable. Now, that doesn't mean we should abandon data. The real magic happens when combining data with storytelling. Together, they create a narrative that is both credible and emotionally compelling. When we talk about prevention, we often focus on systems, data, and strategies. But at the heart of it all are people. And no group is more vital to this work than young people. Their voices hold unique power. They bring authenticity, relatability, and fresh perspectives that we as adults often overlook. Engaging youth in prevention doesn't just benefit young people themselves. It strengthens the entire community. When we give young people the tools and opportunities to lead, we're not only empowering them to take ownership of their future, but also creating stronger, more connected communities. Youth leadership sends a message that prevention is a shared responsibility and that everyone's voice matters. Now, SAMHSA emphasizes the importance of fostering youth leadership, and storytelling is one of the most effective tools to achieve this. When young people share their stories, they not only inspire their peers, but also shift societal perceptions and spark meaningful change. Encouraging youth participation isn't just a recommendation. It is a necessity. Prevention efforts are most impactful when youth are not just participants, but active leaders. Their stories have the ability to challenge stigma, to influence policy, and to rally communities around prevention efforts. Youth are agents of change, and storytelling gives them a platform to exercise that power by fostering their leadership and amplifying their voices. We're investing in the future of prevention. Now, these efforts create ripples that extend beyond the individual, shaping communities and inspiring systemic change. One of the case studies I want to share with you is a youth leadership cohort my friend Carrie Terhark does. For the last 2 years, she's invited me down to teach podcasting to the youth leaders. See, the cohort spends 6 months really helping the youth dig in and understand their why, really uncovering their own personal story, and then bringing them tools and skills to be able to share their story and lift up the voices of their peers as well. And we brought podcasting to this group as one means of lifting up their story and the stories of their peers. The first day, we went through the nuts and bolts of podcasting, setting the foundation, and then also really helping them start to shape what their podcast or their episodes might look like. Then they got into teams and they actually rolled up their sleeves and got to work planning and preparing to record their very first episode. And that's what we did on day 2. We recorded episodes right there on the spot. And it was incredible to sit back and witness these youth have real conversations with each other about what life was like growing up in Appalachia, in rural America. Family challenges, family loss, talking about mental health and the positive coping strategies that they turn to when they're feeling overwhelmed and stressed. We brought a platform, we created the space, they brought the wisdom, the knowledge, and the authentic conversations. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'm honored to have been a part of it the past 2 years and looking forward to many more. But that's just one example. Another example was from the Pathways to Prevention podcast. And in this episode, I interviewed remarkable youth leaders who attended the 11th Asian Youth Forum. Now, this forum brought together young people from across Asia, each with their own unique perspectives and challenges. United by a shared mission to prevent substance misuse and build stronger communities, these youth leaders share deeply moving stories about what prevention looks like in their countries. They spoke about challenges unique to their cultural and social context, such as stigma, access to resources, and community attitudes towards substance use. Now, despite these differences, their stories revealed universal themes of resilience, empathy, and the drive to make a difference. Take, for example, Jimmy from Bhutan. Jimmy described how the forum transformed his perspective on individuals struggling with substance use because he realized they're often victims of circumstance, and this inspired him to create change in his community. And we have Shine from India, who shared how her initial misconceptions were replaced with empathy and a deeper understanding of the people and the challenges involved in substance use prevention. And then Sanuri from Sri Lanka. Sanuri emphasized the power of youth partnerships and peer leadership, advocating for youth involvement in every stage of prevention efforts. Now, what struck me the most was their collective wisdom and commitment to action. These young leaders didn't just absorb knowledge, they applied it. For instance, they drafted a regional declaration on prevention, presented it to key stakeholders, and are now leading initiatives in their own communities. They're creating prevention societies, using social media to amplify their message, and fostering change at a local and regional level. Another powerful example of storytelling comes from the Hey, I'm Here, Ohio campaign, an initiative that uses personal stories to address stigma and build empathy around mental health and substance misuse. This campaign invites individuals to share their personal experiences, creating a platform where these stories can inspire hope and connection. Now, by putting real faces and voices to the struggles and the triumphs of the individuals, Hey, I'm Here, Ohio helps humanize complex issues and encourage open conversations. So a few practical applications so you can start incorporating new learnings and tell better stories in your prevention work. The first being the story map. I had the honor to take a storytelling training from the Moth, and this was one of the frameworks they brought us to help us craft our stories better. It simply starts out as explaining the world as it was, really just setting the scene, setting the stage before the big change. Because then one day, this is where you really introduce the disruption, the challenge, the big change. And you go through and raise the stakes. And this happened, and this happened, and this happened. But then you get to that big moment of change. Then you describe the world as it is now, that resolution, how things have changed, what you've learned, what you're doing different as a result of that story. It's a simple framework. And I want to invite you to listen, to look for this story map in movies, television shows, and the stories you hear from your peers, your friends, your families, and your colleagues, because it's there. It's there. You all know I love podcasting, but I want you to really consider and think about the many different platforms or spaces where you can create space for individuals to share their stories. Storytelling has no bounds. It can cross multiple different platforms. And one example I want to share about simply creating space for stories comes out of the Stand Coalition in Scott County, Tennessee. See, Trent Coffey was explaining that they had a lot of girls at their youth coalition that were kind of dealing with stuff related to being a teenage girl, dating, bullying, family, school, all of these stressors. But he wasn't quite sure how to address and how to best support and help them. But he listened, and he really focused on creating space for that peer-to-peer connection and storytelling. So what did he do? Well, he went and borrowed 30 beanbags from the local Boys and Girls Club, set them up in a circle, and simply let the girls sit there and talk to each other. He stepped back, stayed out of the way, but he created the space. This has grown into being called the Pond. And now they've partnered with the University of Tennessee to bring in counselors and mental health support if the need arises. But what Trent did was create space for storytelling, for connection, and for peer support. So don't overthink it. There's lots of different ways to get stories out there, but you can always keep it simple and simply borrow some beanbag chairs. One last example of storytelling in action comes from this podcast here. It's been a little bit, so you may not have caught this episode, But I had the opportunity to interview the Recovery Center of Excellence. And they told me about a project that they were doing in rural Kentucky, eastern Kentucky, and Appalachia. And what they did was they partnered with artist Charmaine Wheatley. And Charmaine met with individuals impacted by opioid use disorder to paint their portraits and represent key moments in their lives through words and phrases in watercolor. Now, they developed it with community partners in Appalachian Kentucky, and the art campaign was really focused on humanizing the opioid crisis, focused on creating conversations to provide a foundation for discussion, to address stigma and ways to reduce it in rural communities. And these murals, these paintings are giant. They're on display in the community for all to see. They host workshops throughout the community around these murals and paintings to really facilitate and guide these community conversations. I do want to tell you about a piece of my mind, another way to tell stories in addition to podcasting, in addition to borrowing beanbag chairs. My friend John Noltner at A Piece of My Mind has created a multimedia arts project. And John uses portraits and personal stories to bridge divides and encourage dialogue around important issues. Now, through exhibits, workshops, lectures, and even on-site studios, he leads a transformative experience that helps a polarized world rediscover the common humanity that connects us all. Storytelling knows no bounds, from beanbag chairs to podcasting to watercolor portraits and photography, to create space for stories, create space for connection, and create space for support. So those are just a few examples of how to create, how to share stories in your communities. So again, think outside the box. It's about creating space and opportunity for folks to share their story and connect with others around their stories. Key takeaway, just know the transformative power of storytelling and know that youth leadership is what drives change. And so now, as you go forth after listening to this episode, I want you to think about how will you use storytelling in your conversations this week. Last but not least, little note to leave you with. Stories are lifelines. They transform pain into purpose and stigma into empathy.
Thank you for listening to the Prevention Leaders Podcast with Dave Clausen. Since prevention is better together, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this and other episodes with a friend. If you have a topic idea or guest suggestion, follow us on social media or email us at info@preventionleaders.com.